Hi, my name is Samir, and last year I managed to complete my first ever marathon. And the reason I'm making this video is to give anyone who is thinking of doing a marathon or is about to do a marathon some tips and some advice to make that process a little bit easier for you. So, first off, just my story in terms of how I managed to do it. Back in August 2020, when we were in the first sort of COVID lockdown, there was this charity event which encouraged people to donate £5 when you ran 5 kilometers and then shout out 5 more people to do the same. So I thought, this is a great idea. I'm stuck at home, got nothing to do. Let's do this. I'd never really done a run outside the house before, a recorded run, right? So I just got out my phone, downloaded a running tracking app, and yeah, I just went, I ran, and I got pretty tired pretty quickly. I looked at the running tracking app and it said I'd run like 500 meters, not even. So it was there when I got a pretty big reality check that I wanted my cardio to improve. And lots of my friends were completing this challenge pretty easily, running 5Ks pretty easily. So I thought, okay, I really want to improve this. So after that, I kept grinding, I just kept running every single day. And eventually I hit my first ever 5K, which was great. At this point, I kind of developed running into a hobby of mine, and I would just go frequently. And I got up to a 10K, and then one day I ran a half marathon, which is 21 kilometers around. And it was last year in sort of May 2023 where I decided to stick to a consistent training plan to run a full marathon, which is around 42 kilometers. So that's what I did. I stuck to a London marathon training plan. Every single week consisted of around 3 to 4 runs. And then, I followed that. And luckily, I managed to complete a full marathon last year, which was absolutely amazing to knock off that personal challenge. And so today I'll just go into those tips, give you some advice. I've got around 6 tips I can give you to make this process a lot smoother. And I think it's crucial you implement these tips into your marathon training to make sure you cross the finish line on that day. So the first thing I want to quickly go over, number 1, is about your marathon training plan and working that out. So there are a bunch of marathon training plans online, which I do recommend you just do the research and follow one. I'll link the one that I use down below in the description. And you can also create one yourself, but it's probably best to just use one that's already been tried and tested and people have used before. Now, in a common marathon training plan, this will be around 12 to 16 weeks. And if you're a beginner, it will be around that length. But if you're more advanced, it'll probably be shorter than that. And during those weeks that you're training, it will be around 3 to 5 days of running. Make sure you're getting like a rest day in between, so you're not running every single day. And they should also incorporate a gradual increase in time and distance run. So at the start of the training program, it should be smaller runs, maybe not even hitting 5Ks, walks and runs, and then gradually increasing as the weeks go on. And that's what my training plan did, that's the one linked below. And it's really important as well that there's a bit of maybe strength training scheduled into that. Strength training is important. I'll mention that a bit as well. And it's really important you maybe put in some walks as well to aid the rest and recovery. And it's encouraged that near the end of the training, you'll be able to do around 20 to 30 miles in total, collectively with all the runs during that week, to be able to be at a point where you can run the full marathon. But that's just a recommendation. During your runs, during your marathon in particular, you're going to want to make sure you have enough hydration. Firstly, in terms of water. Secondly, you want electrolytes. And thirdly, you want some carbs. Now, it's important to just keep sipping those during the actual run. When it comes to the gels, you can buy these electrolyte gels like Holland & Barrel, any sort of sportswear store. And you want to be sipping those kind of every sort of 30 minutes. You'll be having one of those gels, and then throughout the run just sip them here and there. With the water, kind of just keep drinking that. And with carbohydrates, now you want to have around 30 to 60 grams of carbs every hour of the marathon. So if you're running kind of 4 hours, make sure you're getting 30 to 60 grams of carbs during that each hour. And you can get this from bars, from oatmeals. That's what I got it from, I remember. The third tip is, I mentioned briefly before, make sure you're incorporating a little bit of strength training. It's not necessary, but it's really helpful because when you're strength training, you're increasing the strength, particularly of your joints. And this helps them and aids them in becoming shock absorbers, because obviously when you're running, you're putting a lot of strain on the joints. So So doing a little bit of strength training, reduces the risk of sort of damage and repair. And the worst thing is you don't want to ever be injured just before your ideal day for the marathon. So strength training is really helpful for this. Tip number 4 is really stressing the importance of rest and recovery to minimize injuries just generally. So what I kind of mean by that is make sure that your sleep is really good and consistent. You want to be getting those 8 hours in every day. And look, even before the marathon race day, a couple of weeks before that, get an extra hour of sleep if you can, just to aid with the rest and recovery. It's important that you're not too kind of stressed or worried during your runs either. So kind of schedule them and plan them in a way that's not impacting your work commitments or any other commitments as well. It's really important as well, I should mention stretching. So before any of your runs, do all the necessary stretches and warm up. This will minimize the sort of risk of injury, and make sure you do a cool down and some stretches after each run you do, again just to minimize kind of that risk of injury. Now tip number 5 is about tapering. So what I mean by tapering is in the weeks leading up to the marathon race week, kind of in those 2 or 3 weeks, you want to be decreasing the length and intensity of your runs. So if you were doing 3-hour 30-minute runs before, layer it down to around 1-hour runs, because you want to kind of gear yourself up and get yourself ready for the actual race day where you're running. You're going to be running for around 4 to 5 hours generally on average. So that's very important. And the last tip I'm going to give is pretty much everything geared towards race day. Now, so race day, you want to make sure that you're getting things right. So we're going to first talk about make sure your equipment is completely ready. You've got your shoes, they're comfortable for you. And ideally during your training, you would have figured out if your equipment's working well, if the shoes are good. Make sure like any sort of chafing, so chafing can happen when sort of bits of clothing are kind of rubbing against your skin. If that's an issue you found, you can always get some chalk or something to help out with that. Another thing for race day is the night before or the breakfast before, make sure you try your best to load on carbohydrates. So you can have a meal rich with carbohydrates, pasta, oats, all of that. That's going to give you energy, because in an endurance event like this, glycogen is the main thing that is being used up here. And for the biology students, the glycogen is made from so things like carbohydrates. So you want to make sure you're loaded up on those just before the race day. And then the last thing for race day is just have fun. You've got a pace, you've worked on your pace throughout your whole training. So keep that going, keep that consistent. Usually there's like hydration stations for you to help you out with hydration as well. But make sure, like we mentioned, that you've planned it out, you're getting your gels in, your carbs in, and you just enjoy the moment. It's a great thing to be able to have completed a marathon. It's something that a lot of people want to do in their life. And probably it's easier to do it whilst you're still young. So just get out there, go on your runs. I really recommend you do it. And look, if someone like me, who my first ever run was around 500 meters, that was my cardio at the time. And like, I know it took me a long time to get from my first 5K to my actual marathon, but I wasn't training consistently that whole time. So I definitely think that you can get that process done a lot quicker, and incorporating these tips can help you on your journey. So yeah, I really hope that this has helped you, and best of luck for any sort of running challenge or any challenge you want to do in the future. And yeah, thank you.